The Handkerchief by Great 78. Chapter 106. Repasts, Refuge, Research and Return. After a dinner of roast goose and vegetables, the five of them enjoyed the apple crumble tart with coffee. Draco had 2 pieces. "Tonks, Lupin, can we walk round the garden a bit?" Draco asked. The couple looked at each other in mild surprise, then murmured their assent, standing to go with him to the lush garden behind the house. As they walked, Draco began asking the questions that he had formulated weeks before. Is there some kind of protection spell, some kind of shield that can be cast over someone not standing right next to you? Let's say someone is standing 10 or 15 feet away. What can be done to shield them? Tonks and Lupin looked at each other. Then Tonks said, "There are only a couple, but I must tell you, there's very little defense to be offered. If the threat that the other person is facing is unforgivable, for instance, or if the other person is physically touched," Lupin added, "no protego or its variations can help very much." Draco assumed something like this. "I understand." "If you think Hermione is in danger," Tonks began, but Draco shook his head. "This goes far beyond Hermione. The students of Hogwarts are being, well, tortured, to be frank. There are cruciatus curses being used against students, in some cases being used by the students against each other. I know most protection charms can't stop that, but there are lesser hexes and jinxes being used as well." "Snape is doing this?" Lupin asked harshly, and Draco was reminded how little the two seemed to like each other during their year teaching together. "No, not Snape. That is to say, I suppose he knows it is happening, but he isn't doing it. There is another teacher in place, Amicus Carrow, specifically, who is orchestrating it all." Draco thought about how little Snape interacted with the students, with the Carrows, with anyone, really. To be honest, I'm not even certain that Snape knows the full extent of it. At Lupin's look of disbelief, Draco continued, "I told you, not everything is what it seems. I can't go into more details, but as for Snape, he spends most of his time in his office, or away from the castle. He is hardly seen any more." Tonks and Lupin seemed intrigued by this, but said no more. "I know I can't protect against crucios or actual beatings, but if there's something that can be done about the smaller hexes—" "Yes, let's show you," Tonks replied. Lupin moved further away, and Tonks cast a spell. "Protego Proculus!" Lupin called to Draco from across the small distance. "Send a hex my way." "Tarantallegra," Draco said. Lupin's legs remained straight, and decidedly not dancing. "Rictus Sempra." "Barely even an inch." Lupin smiled. Tonks laughed. Draco practiced the movement and the spell a few times, managing to cast it non-verbally after about 8 tries. "I really appreciate it. Thank you." "We're glad to help," Tonks said, throwing an arm around him. "It's nice having a little cousin to hang out with, even if you are over a half-foot taller than me." Tonks chuckled and ruffled his hair a bit as he blushed. "Please, give these to your friend Theo," Andrew said quietly to him as they prepared to leave, giving him a large box of homemade sweets. "These are Ted's favourites. I feel as though maybe Theo can enjoy them for him." Draco promised that he would, then gave her a coin that matched the one that he left with Theo before the holiday break. It wasn't as good as a 2-way mirror, but at least she and Ted could relay messages through Theo. He hugged Tonks, then went to shake Lupin's hand. The older wizard pulled him in for a hug, however. "You saved the life of my wife and child. That deserves more than a handshake, I think." Draco reddened at this. "I didn't do enough," he began, but Lupin cut off his words, speaking over him. "You did more than most would have. I must say, after Getting to know the 13-year-old you, I'm more than pleasantly surprised at who you have become. I'm proud of you, Draco," Lupin said meaningfully. It was the moment that Ted had called him son, all over again, except this time Draco did not have the cover of night to hide his emotions. His blush grew even deeper, and he blinked away a tear, as Narcissa wiped her eyes unabashedly. "Stay safe in the new year, Remus," Narcissa said. "Hopefully I will see you this spring, for the baby's arrival." Last goodbyes exchanged, Draco and Narcissa descended the steps and turned to watch the house disappear. Then they apparated back into Narcissa's suite at the manor. "So, you'll go when the baby is born?" "Yes. Nymphadora is concerned that the healer may not be able to come. They don't want to tell the woman the location of the house until the last possible minute, if she's unreachable." Draco nodded. "I understand. Well, I need to go and write to Hermione." It was one of the few times that Draco had said her name in front of his mother, and he found that he was a bit shy about it. "You know, I always meant to tell you how nice I thought it was of her parents to give her a celestial name." Draco turned back physically to his mother. "What do you mean? She was named after a character from a muggle play." "Oh, I've heard of that playwright, too. But a name can have two uses, you know. Hermione is the name of an asteroid as well. It was discovered many years ago. I didn't name it," Narcissa said jokingly at his look of disbelief. Draco was dumbstruck for a moment. Years ago, when he first heard Hermione's name, he thought to himself that he should ask his mother if she knew where it came from. Turns out he should have. He smiled at her in goodbye and hurried to his own suite. Draco relayed a bit of the events of the afternoon to Hermione, who was excited to hear of Tonk's baby bump and Lupin's health. She was also pleased to hear about the protection charm, Protego Poculis. He tried to describe the wand motions, and she said that she would practice and try to get it right. Around 5 the next morning he was awakened by warmth against his cheek. As this was an unusual time for Hermione to message, he lit his wand quickly, diving for the handkerchief to read it as rapidly as possible, in case she was in danger. "Ron is back. He and Harry found the sword. The locket is destroyed." Draco sat up in his bed, with his mouth hanging open for several moments. Merlin on an airplane. This was huge. He didn't care so much about the weasel returning. He wondered if that's why she didn't seem as excited as she should have been. But the locket, and the sword. He knew Snape would eventually find a way to get it to them, but that all of these events converged on one night, it seemed surreal. He wrote back, "That's all really great news. So was the sword able to destroy the locket?" "Yes, it seems so. I wasn't there when it happened. Harry and Ron told me the story. Apparently, Harry saw what he thought was a Patronus, possibly a doe, and followed it. The sword was in a pond of some sort. It was Ron, actually, who saved Harry from drowning. The locket was trying to drown him, Harry said." What the fuck did that even mean? Draco put this small bit of information aside in his mind to add to the other details that she'd said in the past. A sentient locket. Did Weasley explain how he found you? They might need to adjust their wards. If any old wanker could show up and get in, he thought uncharitably, even reminding himself that supposedly he'd saved Scarface's life did not improve Weasley's esteem much in Draco's mind. She responded, "He says he's been trying to come back for days. Well, actually, he claims that he's been wanting to return longer than that, but he was picked up by some snatchers. He overpowered them and escaped with a couple of wands." "But how did he find you?" "He used the Deluminator. It's something that Dumbledore invented. It stores light. Apparently he followed a ball of light here." That sounded dubious. But whatever. As much as Draco found Weasley to be useless, he must have some merit. Otherwise Dumbledore wouldn't have left this object to him. Potter wouldn't trust him, and perhaps most importantly, Hermione wouldn't have befriended him. They're in there having a grand reunion, while I keep watch. I'm so angry, I feel like I could spit fire. Draco laughed aloud. He had no doubt that for leaving them his witch had reamed Weasley up one side and down the other, and wasn't done. Good for her, he thought. He wrote, "I love you, pet." She replied back, "I love you too." Just before lunch, Hermione sent a new message. "I'm reading Skeeter's book in my spare time. It's very eye-opening, to say the least. Harry read a bit with me, back on Christmas Day, and is very upset. He feels as though he hardly knows who Dumbledore was, I think." Draco sighed and answered, "Did anyone, truly? That reminds me. Meant to tell you when I saw you a few days ago, but I got distracted by other things. I found that symbol again, the one you drew of the triangle. I didn't mention it before because it was only a couple of days ago, and I knew you were busy, and focused on getting ready to go to Godric's Hollow." "Where did you find it?" he answered. "It was in the Skeeter book about Dumbledore, actually. There's a photo of a letter he wrote to Grindelwald. He signed it Albus, but instead of an A, he used the symbol." She wrote back, "I'll take a look at my copy of the book as well." He wrote back, "I also found it in the version of the Tale of the Three Brothers, from the Beetle book we have. Our book is likely one of the first published. It could be the original, but there's no way to know for sure. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. I intended to, but a lot has been going on these last couple of days." She responded quickly, "That's amazing. So there is some sort of connection. I wonder what it could be. It seems like a simple enough children's tale, just a morality lesson. Don't brag, don't wallow in the past, etc. I'm going to read the rest of the Skeeter book and see what I can figure out." The following day, Draco was summoned via the burning sensation of his dark mark. He counted himself lucky that this was the first time it had happened since his return. He sat at his own formal dining room table, being welcomed to his own home like an outsider. Lord Voldemort was discussing his next plan of attack. They would need to start questioning everyone who was friendly with Potter, who had classes with him. Any muggles who might have known him before Hogwarts. It was becoming an obsession, that much was clear to Draco. The man was intent upon finding Potter, no matter the cost. Draco watched as several of the Death Eaters exchanged surreptitious but uncertain looks with each other. Clearly he wasn't the only one slightly concerned about this singular focus of their supposed great leader. "Draco!" The high, cold voice of Lord Voldemort brought him crashing back to reality. "I will need you and the others at the school to question students there." An idea occurred to Draco, and he spoke up before he lost his nerve. "My lord, if I may make a suggestion to you. Headmaster Snape and Professors Carrow are all extremely busy with schoolwork. I know most of the students that Potter associated with. I can compose a list and question them myself, and then I can report back to you at Easter what I've learned." Narcissa looked at him sharply, then looked away. Luckily, she didn't want him to do this at all, but in particular she probably did not want him to return for the Easter holidays. He had been staying away these past 2 years, and she knew it was likely safer for him to stay at Hogwarts than it was for him to come home. However, Draco knew that it would take time to speak to everyone that knew Potter at the school, and if the work was divided amongst 4 people, it would be done in short order. This way, Draco could guarantee that he would be the one speaking to everyone, and that it would take much longer. Lord Voldemort looked at him appraisingly. Draco worked to keep his occlumency in place. Gurdy roots, powdered billywig, lacewing flies, stir anti-clockwise 4 times. "Very well, young Malfoy. I shall expect a full report in a few months' time." His handkerchief warmed as the meeting progressed into the early afternoon, but his attention was expected to stay focused on the matters being discussed. Draco knew that there was no possible way that he could check it. He only hoped that everything was all right with Hermione. It wasn't until well after nightfall that the meeting was dismissed. They had been in the room for well over 12 hours. No food or drinks had been brought in, so everyone descended with gusto upon the platters of food that had appeared magically at Bellatrix's summons. Draco stood to excuse himself to check the message. "Nevykins! Why the rush to leave? Aren't you hungry?" Bellatrix's blackened teeth asked him. No, not really. Rather more tired. It's been a busy few days." Draco stifled a fake yawn as though to prove the point. "I understand," she said with a sinister smile. "I will instruct the elves not to bother you tonight. That way you won't need to have them disturbing you with offers of food." Draco knew that his going hungry was his punishment for leaving early and not socializing with the others. "That's no problem." He lied smoothly and swept from the room. The library was closer than his suite. He entered and performed a revealing spell to check for others. He was alone. He locked and warded the door, then spoke the password. "Vinca Major." "I have found the symbol you meant in the book. It is the same. I think we're going to go early in the morning to visit Xenophilius Lovegood. We are hoping he can explain what the symbol means, since we saw him wearing it at Fleur and Bill's wedding." Draco checked his watch. She had not said when she would be awake, nor when they would leave for the Lovegood house. Once again he debated telling her about Luna being held prisoner here. He didn't want her to worry, but when they arrived at the house and Luna wasn't there at home for the Christmas holidays, it might seem odd. In the end, his only reply was, "Stay safe and stay hidden. Don't forget to avoid saying the name." He waited several minutes, but the handkerchief stayed the same temperature, meaning that Hermione was likely sleeping so deeply that she missed the message, or that she was unable to read it right now. He only hoped that when she read it in the morning, she'd heed his words and protect herself. Chapter 107. Suspicious Minds. Suspect Souls. After sending the message to Hermione to keep herself safe when traveling to the Lovegood house, Draco had no choice but to go up to his room without food. Bellatrix had ensured that his eagerness to get away from the Death Eaters would be punished in some way. Draco exited the library and trudged up the stairs to his room, stomach growling in pain and hunger. It might have been worth staying in the room for 3 extra minutes with the Death Eaters, just to have a bite to eat. He was greeted at the door of his suite by his mother, who was waiting inconspicuously outside, having a short discussion with one of their ancestors about clothing styles through the years. The painting itself depicted a woman in a rather cinched dress, with a powdered wig that stretched up at least 3 feet in the air. Narcissa spotted him and bid good night to the painting, turning her attention to Draco. "I thought I might come visit you before you went to sleep, my dragon," Narcissa said lightly, following him inside. When the doors were closed and warded, she turned to him. "Incidentally, in case you're wondering if I am me, we visited with Andri, Nymphadora, and Remus yesterday." A small smile played about her lips. "Don't you want to know if I'm me?" Draco asked her drolly. "I am your mother, darling, I know you," she smiled, producing a miniaturized plate wrapped in a napkin and held under a stasis charm from her pocket. She enlarged the dish and conjured a knife and fork for him. "Merlin, thank you." Draco took the dish to a nearby table, summoned a chair, and began to eat like Weasley after Quidditch practice. He was so sodding hungry. "What did your message say?" she asked. Draco gave her a questioning look over his bite of cordon bleu. "Even through your occlumency, darling, I know your small tells. You touched your chest at some point during the meeting. After that you were far more nervous than you had been before."
He grunted. He had not realized that he'd done that. He would need to be far more careful in the future. He swallowed his bite and spoke. "They want to go see Zeno Lovegood about a symbol that they've encountered. I think they're going tomorrow."
Does Hermione know that Luna is here? Perhaps you can ask her to tell Zeno that she's all right."
Draco considered it, but wasn't sure it was the best idea. Luna did not wish for Hermione, Potter, and Weasley to know. She might change her mind if she knew that they could tell her father that she was safe, but it was the age-old problem. Potter and Weasley would wonder where Hermione had gotten the information from. This visit would be their first time to speak to anyone since Bathilda, which had gone so horribly, spectacularly wrong. They were likely to want to get in, stay together, and get out quickly. "I'm not sure it's the best idea," Draco said, then explained why. Narcissa nodded a bit sadly.
"I went down to the cellars to visit her today. She reminds me so much of Pandora. Head in the clouds, but so knowledgeable and truthful. A very sweet girl. She didn't deserve to come here. I've asked Pym to bring in some of the gardening elves to keep extra watch outside the cellar doors. If anyone goes in there trying to bother her, they'll regret it."
At Narcissa's fierce look, Draco knew she spoke the truth. Wizards had had their bollocks forcibly removed for less by mothers all over the world, he was sure. Full from the dinner that Narcissa had brought him, Draco excused himself to get ready for bed. He lay there, looking out at the sliver of night sky through the curtained windows, his mind working overtime. He thought over all of the things that Hermione had mentioned about what it was they were seeking. They began their search looking for 4 things, he was fairly certain. One was the locket, likely belonging to Slytherin. One was possibly Hufflepuff's cup. There was maybe something of Ravenclaw's, most likely either her crown or her writings. Everything known to have been owned by Godric Gryffindor was accounted for in the headmaster's office at Hogwarts. She'd once said they were looking for 3 more things after they'd found the locket, indicating that some previous things were already found. How many, though, and what were they? One was a ring. The night that Weasley decided to do a bunk, before she regained control of her thoughts and words, she'd said that Dumbledore had used the sword to break a ring. Perhaps the number of things wasn't so important just yet. Perhaps the better question was, why were the things important? What had she said about the locket? On that same night she'd said that Ron had been upset. He'd been wearing the locket, and it affected him so much. And she said Potter nearly drowned, going after the sword because the locket tried to drown him. So it wasn't just that the locket was sentient, it was evil. Like Lord Voldemort. The destruction of the items was necessary to the defeat of Voldemort. That's what she told him months before. But Voldemort was apparently unaware that this hunt was happening. He was entirely focused on wands. But he hadn't always been, Draco remembered. He thought about some of the things that Lord Voldemort had sought throughout the years. He'd sought Dumbledore's death. He'd tried to get the prophecy, of course. And before that he needed blood and flesh and bone to become something resembling human once more that night in the graveyard. But before all of that, Draco thought back to his earliest encounter with Lord Voldemort, drinking the dead unicorn's blood in the Forbidden Forest. And that same year he had wanted the Philosopher's Stone. Lucius had said all of those years ago that Lord Voldemort sought eternal life. Draco sat up suddenly in bed. He remembered the Malfoy family library searches he'd done on Tom Riddle before he was forced to take the Dark Mark. He'd looked up ways to prolong life. The book had mentioned the Philosopher's Stone and the unicorn blood, as well as some bit of obscure soul magic. At the time, Draco had paid more attention to the unicorn blood because he had not realized that that had been Lord Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest with him that night. He had been a fool. He had skipped over the bit about the soul magic because it did not sound familiar to him. But that was exactly what Voldemort had been doing all of those years. And that was what Potter and Hermione and Weasley were looking for. These things. The locket, that ring, the cup. They weren't just inanimate objects. Somehow, Lord Voldemort had performed some insane, little-known soul magic. He'd bound something of his soul inside of these things. That was why he would not die. That was how he came back after everyone thought he was dead. Hermione said that Dumbledore had told Potter many things, had given him some ideas. What if this was it? What if he had sent Potter on a quest to find bits of Voldemort's soul to kill? Draco fought the urge to throw out the entire dinner he'd eaten earlier. That locket, the one he'd placed on Dolores Umbridge's squat neck, the one that Potter and Hermione had been wearing for months. It had a piece of Voldemort inside of it. Fuck. He needed to go back to the library. "Pym," he said into the dark room. Pym brought Draco to the space next to the green velvet sofa. Draco warded and silenced the library, lit the fireplace with his wand, and then spoke to the room. Eternal life, cross-referenced with soul magic. 5 hours later, Draco climbed out of the scariest, most fucked-up magical rabbit hole he'd ever found. Even the name of these insane things, Horcruxes, sounded like some horrifying creation from the deep underworld. He was reminded of something Professor Snape said to him about why Dumbledore wanted Snape to kill him and not Draco. Killing. Causing someone else to die. It does something to the killer. It rips the soul. It rends the heart into pieces. But that was assuming that the killer had a heart, that he had human feelings. In the case of Voldemort, instead of the act of killing another person hurting him, he turned what should have been heartbreaking and made it soul-breaking, by performing whatever disgusting magic was needed to make these Horcruxes. Draco checked his watch. It was not quite 4 in the morning. Hermione would not be awake for at least another 2 or 3 hours, and they'd be heading off to Lovegood's house first thing, presumably. This conversation that he needed to have, to explain to her that he knew what they were looking for, and to offer to help, it would need to take place after their visit to see Zeno Lovegood. He fell into a fitful sleep, dreaming of huge green and gold lockets with long gold chains that snaked around and around his neck, trying to choke the breath out of him. He awoke with sunlight streaming down onto his face. He checked his watch. 10 o'clock. Shit. He'd intended to be awake in case she needed him. They might have already gone to Lovegood's and left. He checked his handkerchief. She had messaged, but he'd been too deeply asleep to feel it through his robes. He hadn't laid it flat under his cheek like he normally did in his bed. All that being said, though, this green sofa was surprisingly comfortable. When he moved out on his own, he might have to ask to take the sofa with him. He read her message. "On our way to where we think Luna lives. Looking forward to seeing her." Then below, another message. "Nearly 9 o'clock. We've been looking for her house for well over an hour. Tired of climbing hills. Ron and Harry have longer legs. It's easier for them. I am ready for a break." He laughed a bit, then put the handkerchief away to see if any breakfast was still being served. He was pleased to find the table still set for breakfast, and thankfully no house guests in sight. As he was pulling a platter of eggs and sausage towards him, however, he noticed a small, haphazard stack of newspapers. In addition to the Daily Prophet and the Wizarding World News, there was another one that Draco did not recall seeing before. Even upside down, he recognized Potter's stupid glasses on his stupid face. He turned it in his direction, taking in the usual headline. Undesirable number 1. Wanted for questioning regarding the death of Albus Dumbledore. 10,000 galleon reward. He checked the header for the title of the newspaper. The Quibbler. "I think maybe they thought that Daddy would stop writing all those things if I didn't come home." Fuck. No. They had succeeded. And now Hermione and Potter and the Weasel were walking into a trap. He could not take a chance of warning her here. This dining room had doors on every side, and they wouldn't ordinarily be closed, much less locked and warded. He rushed to the library, locking and warding the door, and took out his handkerchief, whispering the password. Then he whispered to Hermione. "Zeno is on their side. They have taken Luna prisoner to turn him. You need to get out." He waited 10 seconds, but there was no answer. The handkerchief stayed the same temperature. "Please, answer. You need to get out." Another 10 seconds passed. He waited a bit longer, then whispered loudly, "Please, you need to go." "Who needs to go? Who are you talking to?" Draco froze. Behind him, perched upon what Draco rather thought of as his green sofa now, Lucius sat reading a book. He spoke again, in a more quiet and sinister voice. "You said, 'Please, you need to go.' Are you speaking to Miss Granger?" "Granger?" Draco said, locking the handkerchief. He fixed his face into a look of confusion. How would I be speaking to her? Lucius walked towards him as quickly as his limp would allow, and snatched the handkerchief from his grip. Draco fought the urge to hold tight to it. If he acted as though a simple handkerchief was important to him, it would arouse suspicion. Thankfully, if Hermione replied, her words could not appear without the password. It might heat, but it would otherwise seem normal. Lucius held up the cloth to inspect it. In the light, Draco could see a bit of yellowing here and there, likely old bloodstains, remnants of incidents past. "See, just a handkerchief," Draco said, as evenly as he could. "Now, if you'll excuse me." Draco held out his hand for the supposedly offending cloth. Lucius clenched his teeth behind his closed lips, causing his jaw to twitch. "You need to be carrying around a new, clean handkerchief. This one is dirty. Muddy, even." Lucius flung the cloth at his son's feet, but Draco axioed it before it could touch the ground. He tucked it securely in his pocket. "I prefer this one." He fixed his father with an even stare. With that, he opened the doors and strode from the room, leaving his father to his miserable existence behind him.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Handkerchief by Great78.